Hi, everyone. Thank you for showing up today. We are living in a world where we are constantly witnessed by change. We plans get shifted with structures getting collapsed every now and then, and what always felt as a solid suddenly feels very fragile. So it's in these very moments that resilience becomes not just a quality, but I guess a lifeline. So for me, as a mindfulness enthusiast and a life and mind transformation coach, resilience isn't about going back to who we were before the storm. It's more about allowing the storm to shape us into something wiser, more compassionate, and more whole. So resilience to me is simply learning to sit back and not in the dark, but also knowing what the dawn will bring and still choosing to trust that the sun will rise. Dr. Carlos, over to you. As a psychologist and a therapist who has worked with many such transitions, how do you personally define resilience when the ground beneath us really feels shaky?
Yeah, great question, Dr. Sanghita, and thank you. For me, resilience is that capacity to dig into the parts of yourself where courage lives, to dig into those parts of yourself where you find this quality that you just have a greater capacity to navigate things like fear and doubt. And I think in our world, oftentimes we're sort of trying to teach resilience from this sort of very strategic place about the tools or how we can learn resilience. And I think that's great. But what my experience has been, both in my own life and in my work, is that resilience is going to come as we navigate the challenges of our lives, as we go through the struggles, as we go through the ups and downs of our lives, when we have to face those parts of our inner selves that we've never had to face, and the courage that we develop there, the wisdom that we develop there. For me, resilience is about tapping into that inner knowing, into that inner place of resilience that allows us to keep moving through hard things with a lot more courage and a lot more bravery.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
So today, as we are discussing on this topic, I wanted to also ask you if you could please share your insights on the nervous system and how when we're naming the problem as in fear, aggression, um, how would you, briefly explain it to our audience today?
Yeah, I mean, so probably most of us have heard about the nervous system and fight or flight, and how the brain has been wired evolutionarily to respond to stress, to fear, and to other intense emotions, right? So the mind is a very, very powerful thing. The mind often can't tell the difference between chaos that's actually happening in front of you or
Mhm.
chaos that you're creating through your thoughts. So
Wow.
your nervous system is going to respond the same, right? So an
Mhm.
example of this is, if the when you first wake up in the morning, the series of thoughts for the first hour is like, today's going to be a horrible day. There's going to be a lot of traffic. You're just worrying about all of the burdens, all of the fears. Oh my God, today's going to be a horrible day. Your nervous system is going to respond to that, right? So we need to be very mindful about the narratives and the stories that we are playing out, the film that we are playing out in our minds on any given day. And that's really challenging for us to do in a world where we're constantly met with goals and metrics and things we need to do and responsibilities, right? Like, who has time to check in with the mind and see the story that's playing out? But as someone who has grounded themselves in meditation and mindfulness now for many years, I can tell you that not only do I find that my nervous system is more regulated as I'm able to do that, my stress levels go down. Burnout isn't as much of an issue in my life. And I just find myself in a place to be able to respond to
Mm.
life's changes versus always being reactive to life's
Mm.
changes.
That's beautiful. I really love that. How, you ground this conversation to, your whole experience as we dive into meditation and being mindful every moment of the day. Because I find that, the truth is uncertainty doesn't just live in our minds. I think it also pulses through our whole system. And then it kind of sips into our daily choices, like you mentioned. And I've seen people, hesitate to leave this unfulfilling jobs or, because the unknown feels scarier than the pain of feeling or staying stuck. And I think I've seen people also withdraw from love because vulnerability also feels too unpredictable.
Yeah.
And perhaps the most painful of all is that I've seen people silence their own dreams because, self-doubt that kind of whispers that maybe I'm not enough, to carry this vision forward. And that self-sabotage is one of the bigger fear they need to get overcome. So I think uncertainty awakens our deepest fears within, but it's not just out of failure all the time. It's also but of our own power. And I wanted to ask you, Dr. Carlos, from your experience as a psychologist, how have you seen self-doubt erode this people's ability to trust themselves and in turn to trust life?
Yeah, great question, Dr. Sangeeta. I just want to sort of reiterate something that you said there about uncertainty because we need to normalize that for ourselves. Like it's absolutely scary, right? To not be able to know what happens next. And I think that that's where a lot of us develop some of this anxiety and this stress
Mhm.
because the mind wants to know, right? The mind wants to have a plan. And so when that's not there, that's where we see all of this dysregulation, both in our bodies and in our minds. Um, but I think that you're talking about self doubt, and one of the things that I really value in my work is helping people understand where their self doubt comes from. Now, self doubt is often different than fear. Fear is, a very healthy and good thing to experience in our lives. It lets us know when we need to be mindful of our environments, if we need to move out of our environments, if we need to set boundaries. But oftentimes, self doubt is rooted in our early childhood experiences,
Yes.
right? And if you think about it, when you grow up as a child, you're in a position to really, right? You don't understand the world. You're very dependent on the people in your world to help you navigate your emotions, to help you navigate actual world experiences. Um, and I talk a lot about how parenting sort of creates the stories that we then tell ourselves later on as adults. So, for example, if you grew up in a home where you were constantly told, get down from there, you're going to hurt yourself, that you were constantly made to be questioning your thoughts, your feelings, and your opinions and your actions. My
Mhm.
sense is that over time, in both subtle and not so subtle ways, we develop a really almost like a pattern, right? A pattern of
Mhm.
constantly questioning ourselves. And I see
Mhm.
this with my clients all of the time. Now, the constant questioning of the self then develops into fear, self doubt. Even when you feel like you're making the right decision, you're not listening to your gut. You're in your mind with this repetitive sort of motion of overthinking and overanalyzing.
Absolutely. That's such a powerful way of reframing that. Could you also share a bit more on the physiology of stress, How does that look like when we are set to offer some of the small practices that we do?
Yeah, well, I mean, let's start on the other side of that, which is when your nervous system, right, is dysregulated, especially for short periods of times. That is great, but the research has shown time and time again that when your nervous system is dysregulated for long periods of time, that what starts to happen is right, like elevated levels of cortisol and other hormones that can create disruptions in our sleep, can create
Mhm.
anxiety and other clinical challenges. can create, again, a capacity to always be in this cycle of distress, right? To always be in a cycle of worry. So the practices that you and I are talking about, those practices that we're going to get into more discussion about here in a little bit, what they help us do is to regulate that nervous system, right? To help that nervous system feel more grounded, more in the
Mm,
moment, and to
mhm,
function, right?
mm.
So that we can think better, so that we can
Yes,
feel our emotions better, and so that we can
yes.
connect with others on a much deeper level. But if we're constantly dysregulated, you can see how that impacts focus. I mean, it's just a slew of positive things that we can
Mhm.
inherit if we're starting to ground ourselves in more mindful practices.
I love that. It's beautiful. Yes. And what you shared actually now reminds me that resilience often begins with the body remembering it is safe, right? So and once the body feels safe, I think the mind can really open. And from that very spiritual lens, I'm sure you will agree that we often invite people to see uncertainty not as a void, but as a womb. And that's a womb of possibility. Like where uncertainty is, simply uncomfortable, we all acknowledge that. But the discomfort is often the first sign that something new is trying to be born. And instead of asking, what if everything goes wrong? And if we just might switch it, flip it by asking, what if something greater, than I have imagined is waiting to emerge in from this unknown? So I think, like since Dr. Colors, you weave together psychology and coaching, would you guide us into a very short grounding practice so that we all can experience today that shift, from the grip of fear into the spaciousness of possibility?
Yeah, yeah. So I'll sort of invite listeners at this moment to, if they feel like they're in a place where it feels safe to do so, to maybe just close their eyes for a minute and to simply bring our attention to the breath. And we're not trying to shift the breath here in any moment, in any way. We're simply paying attention to the fact that we are breathing in this moment. Sometimes we notice the breath through the cool or warm air coming in and out of the nostrils or the nose or the mouth. Sometimes we experience the breath through the rising and falling of the chest or the stomach. Just sort of choosing one of those for the moment to bring your attention. Noticing the inhalation, noticing the exhalation. Maybe for a moment, just bringing your attention to your body, noticing if there's a part of your body that comes to mind sooner than another. Maybe allowing yourself to notice any places that you're feeling tension, strain, resistance, or stress. Maybe noticing that the body is quiet and calm. Maybe you take a second to bring your attention to the mind. What's the story playing out? What are the thoughts coming through? Just acknowledging and normalizing that the mind is often a busy place and that we can simply stand back and notice. We might imagine that the thoughts are like clouds in the sky, and as they drift in, we can also watch them drift out. And maybe here, just allowing yourself to take a bit of a deeper inhale, filling up the lungs all the way down to the bottom as you inhale, and allowing for a longer exhale, letting all of that air move out of your lungs. Allowing yourself to do two more of those breaths on your own. Nice, deep inhale. And as you exhale, imagine that you are breathing out anything you don't need, any thoughts, any stress, any aches. Now allowing your breath to sort of come back to its natural state. And just noticing if anything has shifted. Maybe it has, maybe it hasn't, maybe something's shifted in the mind or the body. And when you feel ready, starting to bring your awareness back into the room by moving your body, your fingers, your arms, and opening your eyes.
That was so beautiful and so grounding. Thank you so much. Thank you.
Mm.
Even, sometimes this few breaths can be a real homecoming. Noticing how the storm doesn't always disappear, but then suddenly we are standing differently within it, I guess. And I think this is resilience, what we have been talking so far, not escaping the uncertainty, but cultivating the strength to walk with it. And
Yeah.
I love to, ask you, Dr. Carlos, to speak on this awareness and how to integrate into our daily life.
Yeah, so we think about mindfulness practices as probably the most efficient and best way to do that. I have been teaching my clients mindfulness and teaching myself mindfulness for many years. So I think the first sort of thing to offer to people is to be patient. That if this is not a practice that you have grounded yourself in, that it's going to take a little bit of time. Again, just because the mind is very busy, but that we do have this beautiful, beautiful capacity to develop what I call the witness or the observer mind, which is that capacity to see that behind all of the thoughts, right, behind all of the things that are happening in the world at any given time, there's this version of us, we can call it the consciousness or the soul, that it just kind of observes what is happening. And when we're able to, through mindfulness practices, or maybe through meditation, or even yoga or other practices that we can sort of discuss, um, it's to really refine that observer mindset, right? To notice that emotions will come and go, thoughts will come and go, and
Mhm.
even all of our experiences will come and go, right? That it's this idea of impermanence, um,
Yes.
and it can really help relieve the ways that we create suffering in our own mind because, again, we become this observer of the human experience and don't have to feel like we're yanked around by every thought and everything that is unfolding in our lives.
Absolutely. I love it. Yes, that very impermanence. And I think to be able to reach the awareness is that one key that, that really unlocks the door. But once the door gets open, we need some anchors as well to keep us steady as we walk through it. I would encourage my clients to create small rituals, in my sessions, like begin the morning by journaling or stepping into a challenging moment, pause for 3 quick deep breaths, and just lean into a community because I think resilience is not really a solo performance. It also grows stronger when we all feel held in a circle. And that's exactly what the session, the retreat that we're going to talk about very soon is all about going to be, where we are reminded we do not have to carry the unknown alone. And Dr. Carlos, just a quick question. When you work with your clients as a coach, as a therapist, how do you help them not only adopt these practices, but sustain them, especially when old fears and the patterns that you talked about, they try to pull them back? So that would be great.
Yeah, the first part of my work, Dr. Sangeeta, is to help clients understand why they're playing out the stories that they're playing out, why they have the narratives around fear and doubt and inadequacy.
Yes.
Because from that position of understanding, they are then better able to start to let go or create distance from that. Now, once we've done that, then we start to step into what are the practices that we want to embody now? What are the things that we want to start to do? For every client, it's a little bit different, but for some of us, it might be an investigation of how to tolerate emotions a little bit differently, especially those tougher emotions like grief and fear and shame. Sometimes it's about setting some of these grounding tools, right? Maybe we look at journaling. Maybe it's a little bit of breath work. Maybe we invite someone to start doing some yoga and seeing what comes up for them there. I'm a big fan of meditation, so that's something I weave into and teach my clients during our sessions. 5 minute, a 5 minute meditation, a 10 minute meditation. I think the bigger thing is to meet clients where they're at and see what are the tools that are really speaking to them and allowing them to start there. Right. I also talk a lot about change, behavior change, and mindset change, and
Mhm.
recognize that that's often really hard to do. So I love
Yes.
this concept of 1% changes, right? Find that
Love
little
that.
thing that you can lean into today and start there and let your confidence build around that little practice, right? So I'm super excited about this retreat that you and I are doing because we're going to go into these tools at a much greater degree. And,
Yeah.
again, maybe it's like a mantra or maybe it's beads. There's so many beautiful tools out there that we can utilize to ground ourselves. And I'm really excited to be able to share those with folks that come to our retreat.
Yes, that's lovely. I love how you spoke about the limits of that one particular session, and that single practice in itself can shift us in a real time and moment. But that true resilience is always built in complete immersion. And that's exactly what we are trying to create in this upcoming retreat and spaces where we can not only learn but also embody. And it's so beautiful to do that. I think that's exactly why you and I have created the Sacred Transition, which is coming on October 11. It's a 3 hour live journey where we bring together the wisdom of science and, of course, the depth of soul. And in retreat, something profound happens. I think the conversations, they move from the mind into the body, from the theory into real experience. And of course, people stop saying, like, I understand resilience, and they start really feeling it in their breath, in their choices, and in their way of being. And today I wanted to ask you lastly that how you often remind that, resilience is not just about survival, but it's also about learning to thrive. And can you share why combining the science and soul is really essential to make that shift for real?
Yeah, beautiful question, Dr. Sangeeta. And I love what you just said there. I think for me, where my life significantly shifted was when I started to not only understand certain philosophies, but also to start engaging in the practices that helped me. Um, you know, this soul, right? We understand that there's kind of the human experience, but then there's the soul experience. And when I started to identify more with my soul and less with the craziness of the human experience that we're all, kind of here having, I recognized that there was such an inner shift, right? It was this idea you've said multiple times here today of coming back home, of
Mm.
embodying that womb, of being in a place of trust and inner wisdom. And so, resilience for me is, can we cultivate that relationship deeper within ourselves?
Mm.
Because when you recognize that as a soul, you are limitless, when you
Yes.
recognize as a soul that that there's just this series of like human experiences that are here for you,
Yeah.
to teach you, to guide you, um, then fear starts to go away, doubt
Yes.
starts to go away, and what shows up is resilience because you're willing,
Mm.
yearning to engage in everything that happens in your life from this more grounded, rooted place, from a place of just joy and happiness.
Mm.
And I would say even bliss at times, right? There are times where I am in the midst of one of the biggest struggles in my life, and I will experience this like deep gratitude. Like I will
Yeah.
literally bring myself to tears because I am so happy about the mess that I'm in, because I know that it's serving my soul on such a profound level. And I know that like I'm so excited again because I know that you can relate to a lot of this, and I'm excited to bring a lot of this wisdom, this knowledge, and these practices to those folks that want to attend our retreat.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. I couldn't agree more. And you have said it beautifully. Because I always believe, like we're much more than the shell. I would love to collect the outer appearance like that. And yes, like you mentioned, like, that those deep gratitude moment when it just come in, mostly at unexpected turn of events, it also makes us feel that sometimes suffering is also grace in itself. And we're just shifting into a whole different topic, but I just wanted to very much redirect to the conversation on resilience. And my offering today to everyone watching this video so far, thank you for taking time and space. And yeah, the next time, life feels really uncertain, instead of asking, why is this happening to me, and play that victim mindset, it's very important to ask, what is this teaching me? That small reframe can really, really transform that fear into wisdom, like you said, and resistance into growth. And I think, Dr. Carlos, like, what is one last message you would like to leave our participants with today?
Yeah, I'd share with folks that we are, if we just kind of take a moment to look around in our communities, in our towns, and in the world, there's just a lot of uncertainty out there. There's a lot of chaos, if I'm honest. And there's no better time than to learn um, tools if you don't have them already. But even if
Mhm.
you have the tools, how to deepen them so that we can continue to do the work we need to do on ourselves so that we can be better vehicles for compassion in the world, better vehicles for love, better vehicles for healing. Because I
Mhm.
do really believe that the more we heal ourselves, the better we can then help to heal others.
Absolutely love it. Thank you so much. And what we have touched today is only surface level for the audience. If this conversation really resonates with you, we would love to have you in our retreat and join us on October 11th, the Sacred Transition. It will be going to be a global 3 hour immersion where you don't just hear talks about resilience, but you get to practice it, embody it, and take it back into your life. You will find the details on all our socials and at the end of this video. We would love to be, more than honored to hold the space with you together with Dr. Carlos and I. Thank you so much, Dr. Carlos, once again.
Thank you, Dr. Sangeeta.
Thank you.